Welcome back. So I recently left a startup where I was often the solo UX designer in order to join an organization that has a larger team. And this setup is pretty common in startups where design maturity tends to be lower, and also especially in today's job market where companies seem to be seeking more generalists rather than someone who specializes in, say, research, UI, or content. For anyone new to the corporate world or just design in general, I usually recommend joining a larger team so that you have peers to learn from day to day, especially because it can be easy to develop bad habits when you're new and not even be aware of it. And while you certainly learn to be self-sufficient as a solo designer, I do feel like you can level up faster when you're working with and learning from others. But I also understand that that's not always an option these days when there aren't jobs aplenty, especially for junior UX designers. So I wanted to share some of the things I learned being a solo designer in case you find yourself in the same situation and you want to make the most out of your experience. Be organized. This applies to any job, but it's even more important when you're managing all your design activities by yourself. I wish I had done this even sooner, but keeping a design sprint board that's open to everyone in my organization was personally a game changer. I was able to keep a backlog of all the design requests that came in from other departments so that they were also able to see planned work and also that their feedback was not being ignored. I was also able to better estimate how much work I could realistically complete in a 2-week time frame based on historical velocity. I assign story points to all my work, which is an estimation of how much time I think it'd take to complete the activity. It's usually based on the complexity of it and also factors in potential risks. So for example, if I have a ticket for conducting stakeholder interviews, I may need to pad the story points a bit just in case we run into scheduling issues. Keeping a backlog also helped me easily move items up and down the list as priority shift, so I don't have to forget about the things that have been postponed to a later date. Find a mentor figure, even if they don't have a design background. If you're the only designer on the team, chances are you may not have a manager who also has a design background. And that was the case for me, but doesn't mean you can't still find a much needed mentor figure. There are still priceless things that you can learn, soft skills that will help you grow as a designer. My manager was actually the VP of product, but he had more of an engineering background. That being said, I learned how to better collaborate with stakeholders, how to communicate value in the work that we do, and also when to let go of ideals when we're faced with constraints. It also helps to have an advocate in a leadership position who can help with getting buy-in on ideas or just to connect you with decision makers. Involve other team members in UX processes. In organizations that have low design maturity, it's pretty common to associate UX with purely visual design and UI. I find that it's most effective to show people what UX is instead of just telling them by involving them throughout the design process. When I organize workshops, I also invite members from different departments so that they can participate. People want to feel heard, and as a solo designer, I don't get to sit in on every client meeting or read all of the user support tickets, so I also want to gather insights from others. Lunch and Learns can also be a good way to dive deeper on design topics with the overall organization. For example, I had worked with developers who were new to Figma, so I did some walkthroughs with them. And one of our engineers also did a great session around accessibility. It lets you share with others what's important to you. I'd also recommend having team members sit in on user studies. Of course, you want to be wary of how many people you invite because you don't want to overwhelm your users either. But I found that when people are able to hear the feedback directly from your end users, it elicits a much stronger response and a deeper understanding of the problem rather than just reading about it. I also involve internal team members to test certain admin projects, so sometimes they actually end up being the end users themselves. Or they may be able to connect you with someone in their own network who be a great candidate for user research. Sharing research and testing results with a company also gives better context around design decisions that you made, and it can potentially potentially influence the direction leadership takes the product in as well. I've also found that creating and sharing documentation on who our users are and also how the product behaves helped other team members in their work as well, particularly for our sales and support teams. Advocate for the resources you need. In smaller organizations where resources are more limited, different departments may need to present a case for why they need to, for example, purchase a particular service for their team. And design is no different. If I want to get the funds to pay for a software, to hire an illustrator, or to put together a plan for accessibility testing, what I usually do is organize a presentation deck to present multiple options for each of them, and also do a cost-benefit analysis. I found that it's easier to convince someone that what you need is valuable if you actually do the homework instead of simply asking for it. Set expectations. At the end of the day, I was only one designer, and I knew that realistically, I couldn't do everything everywhere all at once. So if someone comes to me with a design request, I always ask, what's the urgency on the issue? And most of the time, I find that people are pretty honest about how soon they really need something, because it means that they could potentially be taking time away from something that may actually be more important. The design sprint board that I created also helped me be more transparent about the work that I have on my plate, because everyone in the company can actually see it. I also try to only join meetings where I'm actually needed. If you're not sure, just ask the event organizer. And ideally, there should always be an agenda that's shared with the participants ahead of time so that everyone knows what the purpose of the meeting is and also what the goal is. Again, if you're not sure, you can ask the event organizer. I block off time on my calendar to work on larger projects and even smaller side requests because they do add up. Otherwise, I risk having meeting overload and don't end up with enough heads down focus time. I mean, asynchronous work is still work, even if you're not meeting about it. Be strategic about what you test. In an ideal world, we'd be able to test all of our designs, but testing takes time, and especially as a solo UX designer, sometimes you don't have the luxury to do it all if you have a lot of projects. I try to prioritize what to test, so some things to consider include, is this an entirely new feature where we've done no testing for previously? Or what might happen if we don't test this? What's the potential impact on our users, the business, and our engineering rework? There are some things you can turn to secondary research to see what others have done. Tried and true design components or patterns have been tested by plenty of other people, and there may also be other products that handle similar flows very well. The point is, you don't always have to start from scratch. All right, so those are some of my takeaways from having previously been a solo UX designer. Let me know in the comments below if you've been in the same position and what worked for you, or if you still have any hesitancies or concerns about taking on a similar role. Until next time, bye!